welcome to episode 71 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. This episode, we're rewatching Good Will Hunting, which was suggested by a listener. It's been a long time since either of us had seen it, and we agreed with our listener that it was high time we revisit the movie that made Matt and Ben famous. While this isn't necessarily a movie that either Ryan or I love, there are many people who rank Good Will Hunting among their favorites. So maybe another time around will make us fall in love with Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting was a huge success upon its release in 1997, making over $200 million worldwide, which, given today's movie market, it feels kind of insane for a movie like this. Critics were moderately impressed. The Academy was very impressed, nominating the film for 9 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gus Van Sant. It won 2, Best Supporting Actor for Robin Williams and Best Screenplay for Matt and Ben. As a result, Good Will Hunting propelled them into Hollywood stardom.
But is Good Will Hunting really as good as everyone remembers?
Or is it something worse than bad? Is it unoriginal? Keep listening.
Exciting math theory ever done. This Ramanujan, his genius was unparalleled, Sean. This boy is just like that. But he's a bit defensive. And I need someone who can get through to him.
Like me?
Yeah, like you.
Why?
Well, because you have the same kind of background.
What background?
Well, you're from the same neighborhood.
He's from Southie. Boy genius from Southie. How many shrinks you go to before me?
All right, so that's the scene from a movie we are discussing in this episode 71, Good Will Hunting. That's a scene with Lambo, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who's a math professor at MIT, talking with an old college buddy, it seems like, Sean, psychologist, played by Robin Williams.
Yep.
Basically just trying to convince Sean to take this kid on as a case. Yeah.
It's math whiz, to say the least.
Yes. But also janitor.
And troubled.
Yes. So we played that clip because it really seemed to summarize the movie, really.
I guess it's tough to say what the plot is. You can say what the movie's about.
Well,
but to say what the plot
is...
The
one sentence from IMDb is Will Hunting. Not Goodwill, by the way. Nice little prank you played on me there.
Oh.
So Will Hunting, a janitor at MIT, has a gift for mathematics, but needs help from a psychologist to find direction in his life.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so sure, there's the plot.
That's it.
Get Will a direction.
Right.
So maybe Will is hunting.
Ah.
For himself.
Wow.
So yeah. Goodwill is hunting.
Yeah. But not in the sense of finding game to eat.
No.
In the sense of finding purpose.
Which, when they went to that pond, and there were those ducks, I was like,
this is it.
This is the scene.
Finally, we're going to see some duck hunt.
And it didn't happen. And I said, well, of course it didn't happen. He's not ready.
The movie is more subtle than that.
He's not ready.
It's a metaphorical hunting, too.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hunting for direction.
Yeah.
Love.
Mm-hmm.
Peace.
Purpose.
Math solutions.
There's that too. He doesn't really need to hunt for that.
He doesn't hunt for that. It's just
there.
He's actually pretty irritated by math problems.
Right.
They're very easy for him.
Which I'm sure we're going to get into all of this.
Job hunting.
That too. Job hunting. Yes, I forgot about that part in it. So this was a listener suggestion, as we talked about in our intro. Eric, one of our listeners. Thank you, Eric. If you're listening to this, we're going to talk about your movie.
Yeah.
You know what? I wanted to just maybe read his message that he sent to us when he recommended that we talk about this book. This is from
movie.
Eric.
We're talking about a movie. Did you read the novelization of Good Will Hunting?
Yeah, like it had the cover on the paperback, and
yeah. That real cheap paper. It never sat straight.
Now, now a major motion picture. It didn't even say now. It just said a major motion.
Major motion picture. Right.
Anyways, this is the message that Eric sent to us. He said, "Any chance you'd consider doing a Good Will Hunting episode? I'm a Boston guy, and I actually avoided seeing it for the first few years. It was out because I was sick of hearing girls talk about how hot Matt Damon and or Ben Affleck was. I'm with you, man. Then I saw it begrudgingly and was shocked by how much I liked it. It's actually one of my favorites. Love the podcast, Eric in Massachusetts."
Yeah.
So we don't have that Boston connection.
No.
But I actually read some articles of people years later looking back on Good Will Hunting, and a lot of them were from Boston, and they all talked about this thing of like kind of being excited that finally there was a movie based in Boston. But then also kind of having a backlash towards it locally because they just got so sick of this movie being associated with Boston as being like the Boston movie.
Yeah.
And like everybody thinking that that's what everyone from Southie was like.
Yeah. And probably just quoting Choi, like allegedly, and being like, that's their Boston accent or something.
Right. But I think that maybe is perhaps a testament to the movie. We'll get into how we feel about it. But the fact that someone...
to Eric, too, for putting aside that irritation, which I can totally understand.
Right. Those are some of the best movie moments, too, are the ones that like you're just really going into it thinking, I'm going to hate this movie. And then you're just pleasantly surprised. Like, wow, the movie did not suck as much as I thought it was going to.
Yeah. I think that's happened more often than I've gone into a movie thinking it's going to be great and it's ended up being really bad.
That's happened more
I
that
think
you've
so.
been
But
pleasantly
I think that's
surprised?
just me being super cynical.
Yeah, it could be.
But I think actually I might amend my statement because this podcast has made us watch movies we used to be excited about, and it has sort of been like, I don't like it as much as I.
Well, sometimes, not always, though.
No, but it has opened up that possibility more frequently.
Well,
so this is not a movie that I necessarily have great
I was going to
affection
say
for.
let's talk about our expectations going into this one. Wrapping that into maybe first experiences. I don't know that yours is all that.
No, it's not exciting. I've seen it once. I think I was in high school, maybe early college.
Now, how old were you when it came out?
I was 13. I won't say it was overhyped for me because I definitely didn't see it during like peak hype. I was going to say I think I saw it around the time Finding Forrester came out because that was Gus Van Sant's other Savant movie.
I remember that kind of being like the lesser Good Will Hunting.
Right. I had seen quite a bit Gus Van Sant before I watched Good Will Hunting, like Drugstore Cowboy, My Own Private Idaho. I think I saw Elephant before I saw Good Will Hunting. I'm not sure. In any case, I saw Good Will Hunting, and the experience was more along the lines of like finally recognizing the scenes people had kept quoting or referring to. People around me had been like so emotionally affected by it. Like, oh, that movie made me cry so much. And it didn't have that effect on me, but I do remember being like moved by the therapy sessions with Matt Damon. But yeah, generally it was just all I could say at the end of it was that I could verify that I had seen it.
Right. You can check the box off.
I didn't love it. There's something about the way people talk about a movie like Good Will Hunting that I think is going to make me disappointed. Because I don't know if movies have that effect on me. Certainly not those types of movies that people have that reaction to.
So what kind of things do they say when you're talking about that? Like, is it just something you see in their face almost?
Well, yeah, I think so. And they're so like moved and connected to the movie.
Yeah.
And
like it was almost more than just it's more than a movie.
Yeah, like it spoke
like an
to
experience.
them in some way. Yeah. And I maybe it's just cynical and I'm just like I won't allow myself to be spoken to by a movie like this, but I just don't feel like I get spoken to by a movie like this in that way.
By a movie like this.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a disconnect between the way those people talk about it and the way I experience it.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, I don't know if I was good at divorcing those two and saying like, well, that's their experience with it. This is my experience of it. Can I evaluate the movie?
Value in both.
Right. Or can I evaluate the movie in the way I see it and not feel the need to push back on the way they saw it? So I think I probably had a more negative reaction to it than I needed to, but I didn't hate it. I don't even know if I rated it on Letterboxd.
Okay. Well, then, so, even if you had, it probably would have been like a 3.5, something like that.
Something like that. One of those verified I saw it, didn't hate it.
In your mind, a bit of a harmless movie.
Right.
Yeah, I get you. And I actually think that partly through doing this podcast, that has helped me to do what you're talking about, of being able to say, like,
I agree.
You had this experience with the movie, I did not, but rewatching it, I can say I value it this way.
You're absolutely right. That it's more, the more we've talked and been able to like say, can you calm down and not be such an asshole about this?
Yeah. Which, might make for a little less interesting listening when there's just not as much fighting. But still, I think we are seeing value in the different ways we see movies. So I'll talk about my experience. I would say I've got a little bit more of a story to it, but nothing. I kind of had the same experience you did as far as what I thought of the movie. Like it was just kind of a decent movie to me. But I did see this weirdly in the theater, and I think I was 15. So it's pretty.
Well, I was going to say, you're about the age that this is not the kind of R rating that you wouldn't be able to see as a 15-year-old.
Right. And remember, this is what, 97, right?
Correct.
So this is also
Titanic year.
LA Confidential.
Right.
And
big year. We talked about
it was
this
a really big
lot.
year. Yeah. I think I had stronger experiences with both of those movies than I did with Good Will Hunting. But my memory of that time in my life just seems very vivid to me.
Yeah.
So, I was like a freshman or sophomore. It was so vivid, I can't remember which one.
Yeah, just crystal clear.
But my memory of the movie is more about me seeing it than the movie itself. And I don't need to really go too much into it because that'd be super boring to everyone. But really, it was that I was just starting to get involved in this youth group at a Lutheran church. It's a very, very small youth group. Just a group of kind of misfits, I would say. If any of them are listening, I meant that in the most lovable way because they welcomed me.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And there was a youth director who was not a youth pastor. He was just more someone who was maybe in his early 20s and trying to go into counseling. And they were like, hey, you should run the youth group, So he was the youth director.
Yeah.
And I ended up becoming really good friends with him. And I'm still really good friends with him. But I think he just kind of noticed that I needed a group. I needed to find belonging somewhere. And I remember this group, it was him and a couple of the older people, the upperclassmen of the high school. They were all going to go see Good Will Hunting. And the reason they were going to see it was because all the girls love Matt Damon. They really were totally I got to see this new Matt Damon movie. And I just got invited along to just tag along, basically. And I knew nothing about the movie, but that's the only reason I wanted to go is because I just wanted to hang out with this group. And we went, and they loved it. They just thought it was the greatest movie. Of course, they were going crazy over Matt Damon. He looked so hot in the movie.
Classic 90s kind of butt cut.
Yep. Like you were saying, it's a rated R that is okay for someone to see who's maybe a little bit younger, but it's also just a movie that wasn't really for me. I wasn't at that place in my life where I was thinking about those things. I was too young. Mm-hmm. And so I never really had that connection with it that they did because they were kind of just starting to think about college and things like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. And I was enough entertained by the movie and enough moved by it to stay with it, but it really didn't have that type of effect on me that, you talked about other people having. And I never really felt like I needed to watch it again. I remember watching the Oscars and kind of thinking that's cool that Matt and Ben won. And I was that's cool that they won, but I didn't really understand why, I guess. And I thought it was great that Robin Williams won because I really remember loving that performance. And I love Robin Williams because we talk about Hook and,
big part of our childhood.
So I remember being okay, I wasn't mad that it won things or anything like that. And I didn't have a backlash against it, but I just never really thought about it much after that. And I never really did. I know you mentioned that you've heard people talk with this really deep affection towards Good Will Hunting. I personally have never really heard that. I've never really encountered people who love the movie. I never really even thought to rewatch it, except before we got this message from Eric. I think I must have been watching something newer with Matt Damon or Ben Affleck and being I wonder how that movie holds up, especially, which I know we're going to get into, but, just it being about masculinity so much and about it being, a Harvey Weinstein movie and a Miramax movie.
A movie that propelled him to his powers to a degree.
And also just remembering certain scenes of it that I didn't know if they were troubling, but I just remember it being sort of a boys hanging out and kind of causing trouble and wondering was there stuff in there I didn't see before and just being curious about how it would hold up. And
I didn't even remember that stuff when I think about the movie.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I think
I don't know why, but I remembered the part talking about masturbating into the baseball glove.
Oh, yeah. I did not remember that until it happened.
And I think part of the reason I remembered it was being with this youth group crowd. And that was the one part that made me kind of squirm
Everybody
a little
was
bit.
I don't know if I understand that. I think when I say that I hear people talk about it a lot, I think what I'm thinking about is my students. Almost every class, when I get a new class and we talk about favorite movies, every time somebody will say Good Will Hunting's their favorite movie, and that's one of those movies that Alyssa allows. Oh yeah, oh I love that movie.
I am super curious to hear your thoughts on this as a high school English teacher.
Okay,
honestly,
good boy.
Letterbox wise, I had it on there as a 3.5. So we start off at odds. Half star.
Buckle
odds.
your seatbelts. This is gonna be rough. All right, Nate.
All right,
on the rewatch.
You asking me to
still
go first?
A half star.
You know what? I'm hoping through talking about it, we'll flesh it out a little bit more. But I was kind of taken with this movie. I'm gonna bring it up to a 4-star.
Interesting.
It wasn't a 5-star like amazing experience, but I connected with it more this time around than I did the last time. But I'm gonna say before we completely move on, I know it's just supposed to be kind of a starting point, but I'm gonna say that there were mixed emotions around that, I guess, for a lot of different reasons, most of which don't even have a whole lot to do with the movie itself, like as a movie.
Intriguing.
So we'll talk about those mixed emotions, but I want to hear your baseline here.
Yeah, I'd say it would move up for me. I don't know if it would go to 4 all the way.
Okay.
It's either a more informed and assured 3 or a 3.5. But I can see talking me up.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
All right, I like that. So, a little difference there, but let's. So maybe why don't we?
Well, So, for me, this is Robin Williams' movie. I am here for Robin Williams.
That's, I think, where a lot of the mixed feelings come in. It is such a great Robin Williams performance, I think. And you're right; those are the scenes you're glued to the movie. He is really the heart of this movie.
Yep.
Those awe feelings, I feel like your students are telling you. I mean, I can almost guarantee they're thinking of a Robin Williams scene in that.
Yeah.
And there's the big ones.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of subtle things too.
Yes,
there are so many subtle things, even in the scenes where he's not with Matt Damon, that like that scene we played at the beginning with him and Stellan Skarsgård, you're seeing so much in his face.
Yes.
Like he embodies that grief that he's going through in the movie, which I think knowing what eventually...
And I want to avoid doing that. I get what you're saying because I did it too. Like as I was watching, I was like, there's so much genuine hurt that he's able to convey.
Yes, and even as I was saying it, I stopped myself because I don't want to go there either because he's a good actor.
Right. That's the thing.
Like we shouldn't look at anybody who goes on to have a tragedy happen like that and go and look at all their stuff and be like, well, he wasn't acting in that moment.
Right.
I
Like,
guess
you don't want to look at like Philip Seymour Hoffman in the scene where he's strung out and be like, wow,
it was right there all along.
They're
an actor.
He was a great actor.
Yes.
And
I want to affirm that as well. Like that's not what I'm really getting at, I guess.
But the mixed emotions are that I miss Robin Williams deeply.
Yes.
And I'm reminded of that when I watch a performance like this. And so the mixed emotions come in that I see myself being moved by him portraying someone in pain. I do, to a degree, think about his pain and that's the pain that made him leave. That's why he's no longer with us. And I'm so deeply appreciative of the performance and in awe of the skill that the performance is exhibiting, and feeling very sad that we won't see any more performances like that and that we don't have Robin Williams with those performances, but we also don't have Robin Williams, the genuine, caring, beautiful human that he was.
Right. Like when I watch Good Will Hunting and I see that performance, I realized how much of a source of comfort his roles were to me.
Yep.
And not just in that movie.
No.
I even think of like the scene in Mrs. Doubtfire where he's talking about his kids being ripped from him.
Yes.
He's just a really powerful actor.
Yeah.
There's scenes in Hook that we talked about, and I think this movie is just so chock full of those types of Robin Williams moments. You watch it and you're kind of like, man, that was, he had a way of really reaching right into your heart. And even he could do it with a look,
He could do it with his voice.
He could do it with his voice.
But he could do it with his voice. I just, to me, the quintessential like Robin Williams comfort is the smile that melts.
Yes.
he was so good at that. And it is all over this movie. And I'll say, we didn't talk about Robin Williams at all at the close of the last episode when we talked about Good Will Hunting.
Right.
And I think we were both avoiding it.
You think so? We just didn't. We didn't want to.
For me, I don't know. I think I was honestly avoiding the topic of Robin Williams. But I think you're right. For both of us, he is, which in and of itself is a strange concept.
Mm-hmm.
He is someone who's meant so much to us.
Right.
Primarily for me, from Hook, a movie people hate.
Right. Well, we talked about
not
this.
Very good.
Right.
But like,
we can't separate ourselves from it.
There's just something the more I watch him, and I think this might be top of his game, Robin Williams, maybe.
Sure.
As far as like exhibiting acting.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we lost a lot when we lost Robin Williams. So it's not that like conflating, oh, he was only good at portraying pain because he was feeling so much pain.
Yeah.
He maybe was able to have that speak to his craft, but he was able to exhibit that much pain and sorrow and tenderness because he was a great actor.
Right. I don't think it's so much that we're saying that you can see the grief he always had in him in this performance, but it is a character that is embodied by grief.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think what's a little hard to watch is someone who dealt with these issues with depression and grief, and you're watching a character who, again, we're not saying that that's how he was able to pull that off, but you're just watching him portray a character that you're wondering, is this someone who's very close to him,
Mm-hmm.
And we can't go too far down that road, really.
No.
But I just can say from my personal experience watching it that this movie gave me sort of an aching grief.
You don't know about real loss, because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much. I look at you, I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared, shitless kid. But you're a genius, Will. No one denies that. No one could possibly understand the depths of you. But you presume to know everything about me because you saw a painting of mine. You ripped my fucking life apart. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I'd know the first thing about how hard your life has been? How you feel? Who you are? Because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you? Personally, I don't give a shit about all that, because you know what? I can't learn anything from you. I can't read in some fucking book. Unless you want to talk about you, who you are. Then I'm fascinated. I'm in.
Beyond Robin Williams' performance, I think the scenes work.
The ones without Robin Williams.
I'm saying the scenes with Robin Williams.
Oh, okay.
Aside from Robin Williams' performance. So like the development of them, the writing of them, Matt Damon in them, their interplay, I think they work.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not just, there's a bit of a chess game going on there.
Yes.
And that's on Matt Damon too.
Uh-huh.
The way that he is able to show these defense mechanisms, and show, and you can see how this Robin Williams psychologist over time is able to break these down.
Yeah. To his credit, Matt Damon holds his own against. It's not that Robin Williams was looking to act him out of the room or anything, but like it's not like there's this huge imbalance in those scenes.
Yeah. Well, you even take something like the first scene. There's not a whole lot going on as far as emotion in that scene until the very end, when obviously Robin Williams is triggered by what Matt Damon says and grabs him by the neck.
Yeah.
And what you're really watching is this power play between the two of them. And I think that there's a lot going on in even Matt Damon's performance there, where you can even see just in little smirks here and there, little sort of physical gestures he's doing that you can see where he's realizing, oh, I found a chink here in the armor. And it's not overplayed, in the acting. I feel like it's a very smart performance, which is actually more Matt Damon than I think in that early scene.
Maybe you married the wrong woman. Maybe you should watch your mouth. Watch it right there, Chief, all right?
That's it, isn't it? You married the wrong woman. What happened? Why'd she leave you? Was she, banging some other guy? If you ever disrespect my wife again, I will end you. I will fucking end you. Got that, Chief? Time's up.
To say at least one last thing about Robin Williams for now. What's impressive about this performance is somebody who's so known for his energy, his like ceaseless energy. It's his quietness that is so powerful in this movie. In scenes where people are getting emotional and he is maintaining that calm voice, or where he is sitting back and he's almost always sitting back, just like being a solid presence, but still not just passive and not just like an energy drain. He's like still this kind of like simmering energy in that quietness. And some of it's coming through in sadness in his eyes, but also parts of it are coming through like you see his mind working as he's trying to figure Will out, and he's trying to be there for Will, but trying to be there for Will in a way that Will can fall into rather than a way that's like rushing out towards him. His quietness is just so strong and so steady and so comforting to viewers, let alone to Will. So I think that that's part of what is moving us so much about his performance, is that there's so much happening in that quietness.
Right. He is really the character in this movie who is helping Will to work out his problems. And so I think for especially other people who might be coming of age, other men especially who are coming of age or in a similar place in their life, it's hard not to watch that movie and feel like he's kind of talking to you.
Yeah.
And that it's almost like your therapy session.
Yeah.
And you start to think, oh man, wouldn't it be great to have a therapist like this, or to have even just a friend like this, or a father like this? I can see why this movie is so powerful for so many people, because they project themselves onto the Matt Damon character, who's kind of just an exaggerated version of what a lot of men do at that age and throughout their entire life, Yeah.
And what a lot of men want to be.
Yeah.
Like supernaturally talented,
right?
Good looking, fit, charismatic, commanding every room, able to beat up a tough guy and take it to a uppity grad student.
I actually wrote in my notes, this is every man's wet dream, basically. Like being Matt Damon in this movie.
Who they want to be.
Yes. It doesn't have to be math, but the idea that you could have this given talent that other people work their entire lives
experts
for.
are in awe of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that isn't difficult for you, is never a challenge for you.
And that you could be someone who can kind of stick it to the elites and stick it to the people who think that you don't deserve it, because you do deserve it.
Right.
You just don't want it.
The only thing
you're just
holding you
smarter
back
enough and
is-
better enough to say, I don't need to flaunt it like you do, or whatever. And then you've always got the right thing to say. And
the only thing holding you back is not your fault.
Right.
You don't have to own up to any problems you have.
So yes, in that sense, I think, and that's not to necessarily poke a huge gaping hole in the movie, although maybe it is. But I think that that's just the reality of what I think a lot of people see in the movie,
Definitely.
myself included.
That's what I was saying.
Myself included. I think I watched this movie this time around, and I was like, I'm not a Will Hunting. I don't have this like thing that I'm just born great at, and people really want. But the movie makes it very clear that he's at the core, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
He's a good dude who's smart, and just needs someone to tell him everything's okay and you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And this movie, if you can see any of that in yourself, you get it.
Yeah.
You get someone telling you you're going to be okay. You're a good person. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's got every hallmark of like teen desires of undiscovered talent. Like I just have nobody just recognizes how great I am. Being able to tell the establishment off, like Sean's big dressing down of Jerry about like, you don't do this to this kid and he blah, blah, blah. It's like what most kids
want an adult to do for them,
or wish they could say to their fathers.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Boys say to their fathers, or to whatever teacher or guidance counselor or person who they feel like is an impediment and doesn't get their dreams or whatever. Yeah, I don't think it's bad.
it also lets any, and I'm going to stick with men because I really do think this is kind of a man's movie.
I agree.
I think it lets any man in any sort of type of position or class see themselves in it too, because it also validates the working man and it never invalidates that.
Right.
You know, and it also validates to a degree, the intellectual, although you're not allowed to be someone who worked hard for it.
Right.
But it does validate that that's a valuable thing.
It does invalidate to a degree Jerry.
The math professor?
Yeah, the math professor, who is someone who worked hard at it, cares about it, and achieves success.
Right.
Who is more validated is Will, who doesn't work hard at it, has all the opportunities, but isn't required to take them if he doesn't want them. And it also validates Sean, somebody who could have but didn't. And which maybe is not unhealthy, because everywhere else in society we see the myth of the meritocracy being upheld, that if you're in a position, you must have worked hard, you must have proven yourself to be the best and whatever, which is, not true in every case. So to take someone down a peg, it makes a little bit of sense, but not when it is somebody who actually has worked hard and cared, in Jerry, who's a pretty insufferable caricature of an intellectual.
Oh, and he calls math erotic.
Yeah.
And hits on the girls. So yeah, we'll get into that. That's a whole other thing.
Yuck.
But that's also part of the movie's attempt to take him down a few pegs.
Right.
You're supposed to think he's a creep for that. It's not like it's saying that's a really funny thing or,
Right.
I will say this though, and I don't know who the credit goes to, if it's in the screenplay or if it goes to Gus Van Sant. I do feel like even though he's a creep, he's that sort of typical sage on the stage, just kind of asshole professor. Mm-hmm. It does come through that he does care about the field of mathematics. Like he does seem to care about ideas and care about what this kid could do. It is partly for his own satisfaction and for his own, like, what he thinks he's going to maybe get out of this kid.
But he also thinks the
world needs it. He also understands that there's value to this knowledge that exists outside of himself.
Yeah.
This isn't about me, Sean. I'm nothing compared to this young man.
You ever hear of Gerald Lambeau?
In 1905, there were hundreds of professors renowned for their study of the universe, but it was a 26-year-old Swiss patent clerk doing physics in his spare time who changed the world. Can you imagine if Einstein would have given that up just to get drunk with his buddies in Vienna every night? We all would have lost something. Tim would never have heard him.
Pretty dramatic, Jerry.
No, it isn't, Sean. This boy has that gift. He just hasn't got the direction, but we can give that to him. Hey, Jerry.
And I think that that's a credit to the movie to at least make him a little less one-dimensional.
Yeah, he's not trying to take credit for the work Will can do.
And that would be a really easy device in the movie to say, don't you think it'd be super easy to be like, I'll just take the credit for this. If you're not going to work at it, I'll just take your formulas and I'll get the job and I'll do the.
Yeah, I don't think he's made out to be a complete villain, but there were times where I was watching it and he kind of, the way he walks into a room or the way he orders Perrier at the bar and Sean tells him like sparkling water is fancy or something like that.
But you know what is interesting is that he ultimately is right about Will. It's just that Will will let Chucky, played by Ben Affleck, or Sean be the one to tell it to him or help him realize it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is what he was saying all along.
Right.
That you need to do something more with your life, and what that is what they debate about and what Will ultimately has to figure out for himself.
Yeah. But I think Will had higher priorities in his friends and in his past that Jerry just wasn't speaking to.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it gets down to what Sean points out, where even if he is right, his method isn't going to work.
I wondered, is it realistic that a judge would just say to a professor, all right, I won't put him in jail, he's in your care.
Hard to say.
But you have to find a psychologist for him. That just feels like a sitcom trope.
Like in a bad comedy.
Yeah.
It would be like, all right, but he's yours to take care of, and then it ends up being like a sort of
there's like a guitar,
like an odd couple kind of thing.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. That's how we have to figure out.
All right, but he's your problem.
Yeah, it was like 3/4 of the way through the movie, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Could a professor just be like, I'm a professor of mathematics and this boy is a genius? Well, then he's your responsibility. The other two things that I would say I'm here for this movie for are, and I didn't expect this, Casey Affleck.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think he adds a spark to those scenes that make me interested in them, even though I still am like, they don't need to be in this movie, really. And I also read on IMDb that he improvised a lot of his scenes and pissed Ben Affleck and Matt Damon off that he wouldn't say what they wrote for him. That's just funny to me that Casey Affleck was just like giving his brother noogies the whole time, basically.
Which you wonder if it also serviced the work too. It just made them sort of annoyed with this, this twerp who's just
supposed to be annoying.
Yeah.
Double burger? Chuck, I had a double burger.
Would you shut the fuck up? I know what you ordered. I was there.
So give me my fucking sandwich.
What do you mean your sandwich? I bought it. Morgan, how much money you got on you?
I said I get change when I get the snow cone. I said that before when we pulled up. Why don't you just give me my sandwich and stop being a prick?
All right, well, give me a fucking 16.
So I'm here for Casey I'm here for Robin Williams primarily.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I'm here for Casey Affleck.
All right.
I'm here for Elliott Smith.
Yes.
Just that early scene, the Elliott Smith drive home early in the morning. That's just a beautiful, great scene. That's what like Gus Van Sant's Artier side brings to this movie. Those moments of real beauty and mood.
And this is pre Wes Anderson Royal Tenenbaums,
right?
Elliott Smith,
Needle in the hay, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
you're right.
It's an interesting choice for this type of movie.
It adds a solemnness to it, really.
Which I think
it calms you down a little bit. I think when you're watching
I think it adds a credibility to any emotional depth that you might consider accidental. But like, say, well, the people who would choose Elliott Smith to be the soundtrack for this have to understand then the depth of emotion that they're plumbing here. It's such a beautiful and perfect contribution to the movie.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's a good lead into, I had this strange tinge of like nostalgia watching it, even though I didn't have a connection to the movie early on.
Right.
But it was a nostalgia for that type of movie that I don't think this movie could be made now. I just think it's kind of a movie of its time.
Yeah.
There's a nostalgia for like, I'm sorry, you see kind of a more baby-faced Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and it's kind of like, it takes you back to like, I don't know, it's a weird, like, simpler times almost, like a time when Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were just getting started and you didn't know what was going to happen with their careers, and they were just having fun. A time when, not to be too dark, but Elliott Smith and Robin Williams were alive, and a time when we didn't know about Harvey Weinstein, and a time when, we didn't know about even, you mentioned Casey Affleck. I mean, he's got his own crap that we're dealing with now. And a time when you could have, not that I'm saying I want more of this, but just a time where you had just these movies that were straight up just about dudes coming of age, without wondering like, do we need this story? Or, we've had enough of this, or, and I'm not, and
those are valid questions.
Those are valid.
It's even a valid thing to ask.
They're super valid questions. But
I get what you're saying.
And it was just sort of this, I don't know how to explain it other than just sort of like a nostalgic grief I had watching it. Almost like a mourning watching this movie. Yeah. And I don't, and also nostalgic even for realizing that this is a movie that I watched when it was too early for me. And I think I watch now when it's too late.
Yeah.
That this movie never hit me right where it was supposed to, but now I'm actually looking at it probably more from the side of like where Robin Williams was coming from.
Sure. That's
you know what I mean? And then, like the Howard Zinn stuff and the kind of intellectual arguments he makes are the same ones I made, and when I was in, post-college reading Howard Zinn for the first time and really just kind of opening my eyes to like different ways of thinking about the world and politics. And you kind of see in the Will Hunting character these ideas sort of flourishing. And I remember the first time I watched the movie, his big, long monologue about why he doesn't want to take the
Work
job.
for the NSA, yeah.
And being like, okay, I'm not supposed to get all this. And watching it now and being like, I'm following all of this.
I'm tracking with this. And because you noted, he's really good at saying that fast and believably.
That's like get him in a Sorkin movie.
Yeah, exactly. Why hasn't that happened?
But I guess
get what you're saying. Yeah.
It's just this, and it's a movie that is so much about life, just the big capital L life, and it tries to be whether it succeeds or not, we can debate on that, but it tries to be a movie that tries to tell you a way that
a little
you should
transparently at times, which is where it kind of might falter a little bit, but
you know what?
But it's also being really earnest and honest about it, and it comes through.
Yes.
It's authentic. I can absolutely identify the feeling you're talking about. I feel like I get that feeling every spring.
Yeah, or even just changing seasons, fall,
transition
spring.
Seasons. Yeah.
I don't know if this takes place in the fall, but it feels like a fall movie to me.
Yeah, spring is mainly the transition season that does it for me. And I don't think everybody feels it. I definitely have good feelings in spring, but there's also just this remembering sadness that comes over me every spring. I think about people from my past a lot more in the spring. I think about, I just kind of reflect on my life more in the spring.
For whatever reason, it just made me reflect on a lot. It made me reflect on my life a lot when I watched it. But I also, again, not to repeat myself, but I kind of felt like it was a little too late. I saw myself more in Robin Williams' shoes, I guess, where it's not, I didn't have that same event happen where I'm grieving I'm not a widower or anything like that. But I do feel like I'm kind of just set where I'm at. And this is my life. But it was weird because the movie was still affirming. I didn't feel like I was...
It wasn't just drumming.
It didn't put me into a depression or anything.
Right.
Didn't make me feel like I was doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I had a student ask me this week if I believed in free will. And I feel like looking forward, I believe in free will. And looking backward, I believe in determinism.
That's a really...
That I say, going forward, I have options. And it's important to keep in mind my ability to choose and the fact that what I do in my life provides the direction of my life. But looking back, every option I didn't take disappears because the only thing that's true about those options is that I didn't take them. And so looking back, I only ever had one path to where I am. Looking forward, there are possibilities, but those regrets melt away when you look at the path you took. And I think there's a sadness to the loss of those options. There's an affirmation of the path that you're on. And there's an excitement about the possibility of the choices. And I think that is something that is embodied in a lot of characters.
In this movie. Yeah. What you see a lot in this movie is Matt Damon coming to the realization that your decisions and whatever power you have in your abilities could influence other people. His decisions affect the Skylar character. His decisions and the way he acts affects his psychologist,
Well, and his indecision is affecting Chucky.
Right.
When he is, and by the way, I'm a sucker for the best part of my day speech. I loved it in Love Actually. Yeah. I love it in this movie. I love it in every movie that does that. But Chucky says, it's killing me to see you here.
I don't know. I was kind of surprised watching this movie, how deep it goes with some of these themes. And this is written by essentially what I would consider now kids.
Yeah. Right.
Not really. But they were in their 20s.
Yeah.
I think what this movie does is it takes things that we all think about. Yeah. A lot of these things are things that were floating around in my head years ago, and I maybe have thought about them a lot more in different ways and come to different conclusions. But, I think that this movie, it unabashedly deals with these big themes, sometimes actually just blurting them out and talking about them.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, gives you kind of a healthy channel and way to think about it.
Yeah, I wonder...
Do you think the positivity in this movie is cheap?
I honestly wanted it to be. I wanted to be able to write it off as saccharine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it
gets right up to the.
I think it gets in that range sometimes.
Okay.
I think Skylar is way too set up as the cool girl. Like, look, she can tell a dirty joke. Look, she laughs at everything. Look, she's goofy. Look, she's pretty. When she gets emotional, it's because she loves him so much. Like, so any emotion that he has to deal with is easy for men to look at and be like, bro, she just loves you. So I think in those situations, it's being too simplistic and cheesy. But I do think that the positivity worked. Because what's happening for me now is I'm remembering this song by Pedro the Lion called "Rejoice," which was so profound to me. I feel like it is still profound, but it speaks more to my sensibility of cynicism than Good Will Hunting does. But it's lyrically a very short song that says, "Wouldn't it be so wonderful if everything was meaningless, but everything is so meaningful, and most everything turns to shit. Rejoice." And that like back and forth. Just in 4 lines of, wouldn't it be so wonderful if everything was meaningless? Which usually when you talk about things being meaningless, it's a despairing thought. But in Good Will Hunting for Will, it is a comforting thought. I would love it if my choices didn't matter to other people.
Right,
but like
right.
you were saying, Chucky tells him, Sean tells him, Skylar tells him, no, you are affecting us, whether you choose or not. You're affecting other people, and so everything is so meaningful. And when Will and when 17, 18-year-old Ryan looked at things being meaningful, I would look at it and say, but everything that's meaningful is bullshit.
Right. But don't you think if you're willing to listen, the movie tries to answer that?
No, I do. Yeah. And I'm saying the song does too.
Yeah.
And the song just says rejoice.
Which is essentially what the
movie's saying.
Yeah.
I know. It's saying like, yeah, everything's meaningful and it's all going to go bad in one way or another. So you just need to rejoice.
Right.
For Will, that's admit you've got a talent and foster that. Admit you've got a love and go after that. Admit you've connected with people and feed yourself with those connections and feed those other people through those connections. So everything's going to fall apart. That doesn't mean that the things that are good, you can't rejoice in.
Right. And that's what's so, I think, convincing about the Sean character is that's a person where everything did fall apart. And he's not despairing about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's grieving. He's very sad.
Right.
And he eventually he gets through a breakthrough moment where he realizes he needs to give it another shot.
Right.
But he's not regretful. And he
Right.
doesn't think I never should have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And you also get the sense, at least I did, the way it ends with the car just driving off on the horizon,
Classic Gus Van Sant shot.
it's true to the movie in that could all go to shit.
Yep.
He's even in a shitty car.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guarantee that by him going towards Skylar that's going to be even a good relationship. But the movie at least ends true enough to say, we don't know. We don't actually know if this is a long-lasting change.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think so. But you see through the Robin Williams character that decision is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it ends up being a bad decision or one that causes a lot of pain, the movie
Right.
is saying it's still worth it.
Right. Because, he references Gotta Go See About a Girl, which we know for Robin Williams ended with his wife dying. I think you're right. I still have questions about the it's not your fault scene. Does it still work?
It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. All right? It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault.
Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean, not you.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Narratively, it works.
Yes.
As a part of the narrative.
I know this is the most effective scene for a lot of people, but for whatever reason, that wasn't where I was emotional. I was emotional in other scenes in this movie. There was, I recommend people watch it. There's a video on YouTube. It's a series called Lessons from the Screenplay that breaks down psychology in the screenplay of Good Will Hunting. And it talks about just in the method of screenwriting, why that scene's so important and why it hits so many people so hard. And what I can't explain is that I rewatched that scene in the YouTube movie and I got emotional. Like, I don't know. Like, when it was explained to me the purpose it served. We'll put it in the show notes if you want to watch it. But the way that he explains it is that this is a traditional hero's journey story. But this is a hero's journey where they're going to make the case that people can change. Not every story does. And you basically have a wounded character, and then you have their defense mechanisms. And the viewer is always in on what those defense mechanisms are. And we certainly are with Will.
Sean, says, it's a defense mechanism.
And he's got allies that come to his side and slowly break apart the defense mechanisms. So you got that through his buddies. You got that through Skylar. You got that obviously through Sean. And the way that the narrative structure is set up is for the hero to eventually have all of those walls crumble down in a moment. And that moment is called catharsis. And it's catharsis for the character, but it's also catharsis for the audience. Yeah. And that it needs that if you are going to believe that people can really change. And when I saw that, I kind of thought, well, there you go. So, maybe it's not so cheap. The YouTube clip did make a point to say that you also need to show some regressions in there as well. And it did display a few small instances of that. Like when he, obviously breaks up with Skylar, that's a regression and it's painful. It's in the screenplay that Matt Damon looks her right in the eye and says, I don't love you. That's important to them, that is... Yeah. That you
see it as a regression.
Yes. And so, when I saw it that way, and then I actually just finally, they showed the catharsis scene, and I was like, yeah, this is seeing someone on a journey actually change.
Yeah.
And I've reached a point in my life, and I think we've reached a point where we talk about, the way people think politically or the way people... I get in a mindset that people can't change.
Yeah.
People will not change. They are who they are.
Right.
And this movie is a challenge to that.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge to me on that. Like, if I still even believe that, do I still believe people can really change?
Right. Well, and that's part of what's a problem with the scene is that it's such a quick and easy change, really an easy change. Just keep repeating, it's not your fault.
Right.
And eventually,
Yeah. Do you mean, did it work as far as you weren't convinced that would have been effective?
I know that wouldn't be effective in a therapy session. So no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I guess, did it affect you emotionally? Do you think it works narratively? I think narratively, like I said, it does. Like you just said, it does. It's got a very clear function and it achieves that function. I don't know. There's just something about it that pulled me out of it in the moment. Mm-hmm. It might just be that at that point we had already seen and fairly recently seen a bunch of scenes that are just like my emotions scenes. Like the dorm scene, just like
with Skylar.
Yeah, I mean, the last third of the movie, everybody's yelling all the time,
right? And now that you mention it, that might be why when it was pulled out of that, I was able to see it in that video that didn't show all those scenes all kind of couched around one another, because it does get to be a lot. I think. So I think you kind of touched on Minnie Driver's character.
I did, yeah.
But we probably should talk about that. She's a very functional character in this movie, and
another part of the fantasy.
Yes, but it's a different fantasy than you do see in a lot of other movies.
Well, certainly, it's a smarter fantasy, but it's still a fantasy. She's not strictly a sexual fantasy, but she is an emotional fantasy. She's the same function as a manic pixie dream girl without being manic or pixie-ish. She's doing that thing where she's there to just cheer him on. And despite his flaws, keep telling him everything that's great about him. She's not there to challenge him in any real way. She's only there to keep telling him how great he is and how much she wants him wants to be with him.
I'm only gonna push back a little bit because I think you are.
Don't you dare!
I think you are
oversimplifying it.
No, I think you're right to a degree in that the way she functions is pretty narrow. But I also don't know that she's only there to service him. She does challenge him, and she challenges his perception of who she is. Like, you know, he has an idea of who these Harvard people are. Is it Harvard or is she at MIT?
She's at Harvard.
Yeah, who these Harvard people are. And she pushes back on him quite a bit on that. And then also, you get the feeling, which isn't true in a lot of these other movies that have this kind of relationship, that she would be extremely hurt by him, but she does not need him. She will move on.
Yeah.
And she does move on. And you had an airport scene. He's not there. I think that's how it's a little bit smarter. I think that still, at the end of the day, this is a man's movie. And you're not going to get a female character that's as fully realized as we would want at this point, I think. When you do have a movie that is so much kind of the hero's journey, like you could say that about even the non-female characters. Like Chucky is only there to service him.
Yeah.
And
I don't find that as problematic.
Sure, you know, of course not, you know. But that's part of the narrative structure. Even is just that these are people who are there for him because he's the focus of the movie.
Sure, but where all pushback is, there's no real indication that he's going to be accountable for the way he hurt her. That him showing up is going to be enough. You know?
Yeah. And you had several instances before that where he did push her away, and she always took him back, which, you know, is very troubling because if he doesn't actually change, that turns into a very abusive relationship.
Right. I mean, like when he punches the wall and like she's still the one apologizing to him.
So you really have to put a lot of stock in that hope that people really do change and that that's going to turn into a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm with
and
you.
I think
it's not perfect. I get
think
that. But
again, where the movie's cheesy and saccharine is that it does believe Will changed completely. It will work out for
right.
them. They're going to be fine because Will has changed. End of story.
Right. No, I agree. It's troubling. It's just when I compare it to, well, the term manic pixie dream girl kind of came out of the Natalie Portman character in Garden State.
Yeah.
I find the Minnie Driver character just inherently different in some ways. There was a codependency in Garden State that I was uncomfortable with.
Yes.
With Good Will Hunting, you know, I felt like they just loved each other, but there wasn't that codependence. That if he could get through what he was dealing with, and if she was forgiving enough.
Troubling disconnect one way.
What's that?
If anything, there's a troubling disconnect.
Yes. But yeah, it's not something that the movie's going to answer for you or give you really even any good resolution on. All right. Well,
I think you've moved me into 4 stars.
You think so? Really?
I think, yeah.
But I think we're both acknowledging that there's still some troubling things in this movie. But you're willing to kind of say 4 stars is fine, and
yeah,
I'm not trying to talk you down. This is great.
No, I agree. I think the way that the movie is doing things, the Skylar character is a little bit less irresponsibly handled, but still troubling.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the world of the movie, there is hope for her character.
Right. That the fact that they leave it open-ended enough is enough.
She's got some agency there, but overall, she's probably the most troubling part.
Yeah. And maybe with that said, you know, we like this movie, but we don't really need another one like it. We need some different types of stories.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. This is another thank you for your service.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna keep mine at 4, and I mean, thanks to Eric for having us rewatch it, because
probably wouldn't have picked it.
No, I don't think we would have, and it was a valuable rewatch for me, and it sounds like it was for you as well.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that makes us best buds.
Oh yeah.
That's good, and I guess now we can just talk about our next episode.
Yeah. So for next time, we are going back to 2004, so 15 years ago. You're shaking your head. You can't believe 2004
is 15 years ago. That doesn't feel right.
I know it doesn't. So putting the existential crisis that accompanies that knowledge aside.
Right. Which we seem to be having every episode, by the way.
Yeah, just shocked that time is passing.
Right. Anyway, so 2004.
So 2004. And at the same time, looking to the present. Because we're watching a movie that is being rebooted now 15 years later. The movies share a title. They didn't even try to do anything new with the title.
So, listeners, can you guess? Not Star Wars.
No, it's not Star Wars because they changed the title of that one. It's Hellboy.
Hellboy.
We're watching Guillermo del Toro's 2004 Hellboy.
Not Neil Marshall's 2019
right.
Hellboy.
Exactly.
Maybe we will see.
We might see it.
knowing
No.
our life situations.
Probably not.
Probably not.
It'll be interesting because I don't think you've seen this side of Guillermo del Toro. The Guillermo del Toro of Blade 2.
No, I never
The
saw that
Guillermo
either.
del Toro of Hellboy and Hellboy 2.
Nope. I guess you're right.
You are more
The Pan's Labyrinth, Devil's Backbone,
Shape of Water,
Shape of Water. Yeah.
what have you, Kronos.
Yes. What Have You was a great movie.
Oh, Guillermo del Toro's What Have You.
Yeah. I love that one.
And then the sequel and so forth.
Yeah. I don't know what the Spanish title is for that. but-
Y so forth.
Y so forth. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
so it'll be, I mean, beyond just do you like superhero movies, I think it'll be interesting to see where you see Guillermo del Toro in this.
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't really. I feel like we've kind of. We don't need to rehash the whole superhero conversation about
Yeah, and I don't think that that's necessarily going to be what we'll be doing with this
Okay,
one.
good. This is all brand new to me.
Yeah.
Completely. Because I'm wondering if if a lot of our listeners have already seen it, or if they're going to be watching this like me for the first time.
I have no idea.
If they decide to watch it.
I'd have to ask them.
Well, there's a lot of ways that they could get in contact with us.
We have never had a smoother
How about
segue.
that? I just saw the opening and I took
You
it.
did it. You said banter be damned.
Right. And the funny thing is, now by commenting on it, we have
Opened up banter.
Right.
That's how smooth our transitions are.
Right.
They come and go. They ebb and flow.
Like the Shape of Water.
Oh my gosh.
Did you hear that?
You're just
Did you hear
killing
that?
it. I can't believe that.
That is what you call a transition.
I do call that a transition.
Right. I
Here's
will-
another one.
Oh, no. What?
Let's talk about how people can get in touch with us. You see that one?
No, I don't see it. What am I not? What am I
I was
missing?
transitioning.
From what? Shape of Water?
Yeah, there wasn't a connection, but it was a transition.
Yeah, technically speaking, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good job. Good job.
That's all I'm saying.
Very good. Yeah, I thought
Tell me that wasn't a transition.
it was a transition. The smooth aspect of it was what I
I never
was
promised smooth.
Okay, good.
I just said, look at this transition.
And I saw
That in
it.
itself told you it was not going to be smooth.
You're right. You're right. I had my expectations were too high. They weren't even too high. They were just wrong.
They were
Wrong-
misguided.
They were wrong expectations that there would be a smooth transition instead of just a transition.
That's not on me.
No, you're right. And you did it. You pulled it off. Great job. I didn't mean to sidetrack us once again
Yeah.
from our transition into how people can get in contact with us. Did you get that?
That was very smooth.
You're right.
You're doing well.
Yeah, that's my gift, I think, is the smoothness. I think you're better at just coming up with what the transitions should be,
Yeah, and identifying a transition.
but I can kind of smoothly get us there.
Right.
Slither our way into
You're
the...
trying. You're
into
looking
the-
for one.
I
You're
know, I
trying to
know.
like guide it there.
Right. I know, you can see my hands.
You're
are kinda
searching.
Right.
Much like one would do in the Omnibox, which is where you can type the
Oh.
address of twitter.com
Yes.
to find us.
That's right.
At
The search.
CWSBF.
Yes, slither into that search. Twitter.com, which we're not really doing Twitter right now.
No, we're not. Should we tell people that? That Twitter has killed us? Our souls?
Probably, because I don't know.
You can reach us there.
The
You might not
lights
reach
are on.
back.
The lights are on, but no one's home.
Yeah.
So nice transition into Twitter, a social platform which we are somewhat on hiatus.
Our relationship is complicated with
It's
Twitter.
complicated, yes. So I guess, yeah, we might as well tell the listeners. Right now, we're just kind of debating whether or not we still want to be on Twitter or not.
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of leave it at that. But I think for both of us, it's been a bit healthy to be away from that platform for a little
Yes.
bit. And we'll leave it at that.
Yep.
That doesn't mean there aren't still a great number of ways to get in contact with
Yeah,
us.
it's a terrific number.
Twitter, great.
The number of ways is
Great.
fantastic.
It's awesome.
Don't ask
We're
me
not
to
going
say
to
that
tell you what
number.
the number is. That's how great it is. It
We
doesn't
won't
need
spell
to be
this
spoken.
out for you.
But we can go through a couple of the different ways that contribute to that great number. One of which is to just shoot us an email. That's
Yep.
still around.
That's classic.
That's feedback at canwestillbefriends.net is
Right.
how you can get in touch with us through that method.
Mhm.
There's also Facebook.
Correct.
We are on that one still.
I feel like I can get in and get out of Facebook a lot
Right.
more easily than I can Twitter.
Is that what it is? You need an exit? You need an out? That's
I think there's something about Twitter that keeps me scrolling,
Mhm.
and there's something about Facebook that makes me go, I'm done.
So anyways, you can get in contact with us on Facebook. Can We Still Be Friends Podcast is the name of our page. There's also our website, canwestillbefriends.net, where you can comment on this episode or any of our past episodes, and we ask that you do so.
We require you to do that. That is you signed on to this. Our hands are tied. Your hands are tied.
Right.
We wish it could be another way. Just know that as listeners, we require
some feedback
on the website.
It's a required field.
Right.
CanWeStillBeFriends.net.
Couldn't be simpler.
No, we make it easy.
Yeah,
There's
you
no
guys
reason
can
to make
meet
it
us
hard.
halfway.
Right.
And the optional way of contacting
Right. This is
us.
optional. But the optional way that you can get in contact with us is through our phone number, where you can leave a voice message, 847-306-9532. Classic number. Great number. It's a great number. I was going to mention, for people who want convenience in their media, Hellboy is available to stream on Netflix,
Fantastic.
at least right now.
For now. Who knows? If April comes around, Netflix is going to catch word. They're going to say, we cannot handle the bandwidth.
Nope, of them doing this podcast episode.
Can We Still Be Friends Nation? So we're hoping that they will keep Hellboy on for April, but it is a real strain.
Maybe
on their servers.
Well, maybe our listeners can, just stream it. Go ahead and stream it, but maybe, don't be very vocal in whatever way that looks like about the fact that you're streaming it for our podcast.
We just don't want to bring down the internet that way.
Right. Other ways, maybe. But also, another way that you can kind of disperse the bandwidth is that Hellboy is also available to stream through the public library's Hoopla service.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
also support your public library.
So, those are the ways that you can get in touch with us and the ways you can watch Hellboy. We also encourage you to, comment on any of our past episodes. Dig through those archives. Find some stuff you've never seen before and give it a shot and see what we thought about it.
Yeah.
We've got 70 episodes worth. Before this, 70 episodes. That's a great number, too.
That's a fantastic number.
We encourage you to do that. Yeah. Other things we encourage you to do, give us a rating.
On Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
Let them know that this nation stands
Make your
united.
Voice heard. Otherwise, we'll just thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you for number 72.
Hellboy.
Hell yeah.
Hellboy. This episode, That's
tough.
And we agreed with our listener that it was high time we revisit the movie.
It's a mouthful.
It's been a long time since either of